So this card is all about giving the gift and the card all in one go. And what it is we use the technique of a slider box to put the gift inside our slider box and then create a card around the gift. And it's actually one of my all-time favourite cards and one that I find I make the most really, especially when you're wanting to give just a small gift. Now we start off by creating the actual slider box itself. Now I'm going to do all of these measurements on the boxer board, which is the additional plate that is available that clips into place on the Ultimate. So it clips in over top of the card folding section, and you've either got inches on one side or centimetres on the other. And I'm going to work in this project in inches. So we'll pop that in. Now, if you're doing this particular one here for the tea lights, the exact right size to fold for tea lights is what I'm going to give you here. Now, you need to cut the first piece of cardstock to 7.5 inches by 2 3/4 inches. And we're going to make this 5/8 of an inch deep all the way around. So what that means is you rest up against the side where the handle is and come at 5/8, which is the 5th line along. And you do this on all 4 sides. Okay, so once your creasing's done, you burnish all of those creases. And we're going to assemble this just as a regular box. So some little tips, we're going to cut into the corners and cut away a panel like this. Now when you're gluing the corners together, it's important that you either use a super strong glue like the one I'm using here, or if you aren't using a tape pen glue that was actually designed for box making, then I would recommend just using a wet glue and just taking a little bit longer for it to dry. And then some basic box making techniques, we're going to line those two up against each other to get it to line perfectly. And that gives us our base slider box perfectly sized for 4 tea lights. Now notice, although that was the inside or the base of the box, I created it on box lid. That's because it's a true measurement. So if we look, this final box is actually 1.5 inches wide and it's 6 1/4 inches long. But it's 1.5 inches wide and we know it's 5/8 of an inch deep. Those are the important measurements we're going to take forward. So to create the wrap, what I've done is I've taken a sheet of cardstock and it needs to be the same height as what your final inside box is. So in this case, it's 6.5 inches long, okay? And I've actually cut this to 11.5 inches wide. Now, we're going to do all of our scoring now on box base. Even though that's the wrap, whenever you're making wrap slip cases, you need to use the box base measurements. So I'm going to start off, first of all, if I bring the card in, we're going to start off with the little bit that goes down here, which is our gluing flap. So I'm going to allow 1/2 inch. So I'm going to score at the 1/2 inch line, put that score line in, fold and burnish the crease line, and then rest that up against the edge, right? Now we need to come, I'll show you, we're coming up the height of the box. So remember that was 5/8 of an inch. So we'll come along the bottom till we get to 5/8 of an inch, put the score line in place, do the scoring, fold, burnish that crease line, take it back over again, and then butt up against the score line. The next measurement we're doing is we're coming along the top surface of the box. So remember, we ascertained that our box was 1.5 inches wide. So again, we come along the bottom to 1.5 inches, put that in, and at this point it's worthwhile checking and seeing that our box does fit in there, which it does absolutely perfectly, as you would hope. Then I think you're starting to see a pattern now. So you see we need to come back down the other side of the box, so we're back in at 5/8 of an inch. Now at this point, if you want to put an aperture in here, which I generally do to show what's in there, you would just either die cut or measure out and pop your aperture in the centre. And once you've stuck your aperture in, it's ready to stick it together. So I put my tape along here, and I find it's much easier to glue this around the box. So can you see we glue that into place, and then our slider box will just come out. And you know that that's going to work perfectly. You can take your box out, just stick it down, and then pop the box back in. Then all we do is measure what's remaining. So when I put up against the edge, this is coming to 6.5 inches. So half of that will be 3 1/4. So you come to 3 1/4 inches, put your score line in, and I like to do it on both sides. Oh. And then when you fold that over, that gives the final piece of the card. Now you can see how that there is how we created this card here. Now, what about doing an adaptation? I explained to you the principle of exactly how to do the interior box and then make the wrap for it. In the instructional PDFs, which are the sheets that you can access by taking this DVD, putting it into your computer and choosing to print the PDFs, I've done 2 other versions. So one here is a version that you could perhaps put a nice jewellery set in, a necklace. So it's a much thinner box, but much wider. And I've also done a second adaptation, which is perfectly sized to fit a little pen as a gift set. So again, just the sort of gifts that you might want to give in a card like this, whether it's a pen, a jewellery set, or a set of tea lights. Either way, you can always make a really simple card where the card and the gift all become one. And each one of these is actually thin enough that you could make a 3-dimensional envelope for it using our envelope board. So you'd need to use the one that's for envelope boxes.